Alright, so let's finish up this Solving Inequalities worksheet with the last grouping that we've got. So now we're dealing with some absolute value inequalities. We can see that with the absolute value marks here, okay, and it's still an inequality. So the first step is to make sure that this absolute value is all by itself. There's no plus or multiply or divide not within the absolute value. Okay, once we have established that like this, then what we're going to do is we have to create two more inequalities. The reason being is because of what the absolute value means. And if we think about it, absolute value means the distance from 0. So negative 3 becomes positive 3, and a positive 3 stays positive 3. Has to do with the number line. Because if here's 0 on 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3, so negative 3, the distance to 0 is still 1, 2, 3. And from positive 3, the distance to 0 is still 1, 2, 3. Because you can't have a negative distance. So that's why the positive stays positive, but the negative changes to positive. Now, because of that dual nature of the absolute value, we have to take that into account. So what you do is you create one inequality that looks exactly the same without the absolute values. Okay, that's the first one. The second one you have to create, the absolute value part stays the same, but we've got to change to reflect that negative. So whatever this number is over here, whether it's positive or negative, you change it. Okay, so this one was positive, it becomes a negative. And because we're changing it from positive to negative or negative to positive, we also have to reverse our inequality. So it looks like that. Then all we have to do is solve them both and graph it. So x minus 1, we would add 1 to both sides, and that would give us 0, so we get x is less than 10. So we go up to where 10 is. Draw a hollow circle because there's no equal to. X is less than, so I start shading to the left. Then this one we solve the same way. We add 1 to both sides. Becomes 0. We get x is greater than negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8. So at negative 8, I draw another hollow circle. X is bigger, so we shade to the right. So we look at this, it looks like we're shading it in between. Okay? And that's all we do with absolute value inequalities. So once again, make sure the absolute value inequality is by itself. Then we drop the absolute value and go m plus 6 is less than 4. There's our first equation. Our second, the m plus 6 stays the same, but we reverse the inequality and we change the sign. Then we just solve them both, doing the same steps. So I get m is less than negative 2, and m is greater than negative 10. So negative 10 circle, negative 2 circle, m is less than negative 2, shade to the left, m is greater than negative 10, shade to the right, so we shade in between. Alright, so let's just bust these ones out. So my first inequality would be p minus 5 is less than or equal to 15. Then my other, p minus 5, would be greater than or equal to negative 15. Then I add 5 to both sides, giving me p is less than or equal to 20. So at 20, draw a filled in circle because now it's equal to. P is less than, shade to the left. Add 5 to these, and we get p is greater than or equal to negative 10. So negative 10, fill in another circle because it's equal to. P is greater, shade to the right, and we get in between them. Number 36. So a minus 5 is less than or equal to 1, and a minus 5 is greater than or equal to negative 1. Add 5 to both sides. A is less than or equal to 6. Go up to 6, filled in circle because it's equal to. A is less than, shade to the left. Add 5 to both sides. We get a is greater than or equal to positive 4. So a positive 4, filled in circle, greater than, so we just shade in between. So that one has a small spot. Okay, 37, still the same process. N minus 9 is greater than 15. Then my other inequality has to reverse the inequality, opposite sign. Then we solve. N is greater than 15 plus 9 is 24. So 24, hollow circle, N is greater, shade to the right. Add 9 to both sides. Get N is less than negative 8. Circle at negative 8, it's hollow, shade to the left because N is less than. So with these absolute inequalities, they can look like the ands with their answers, or they'll look like the ors with the answers going the opposite way. So you can get both types here. So 38, we drop the absolute values and get k minus 3 is less than or equal to 7, and k minus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 7. Add 3 to both sides, we get k is less than or equal to 10. Add 3 to both sides, and k is greater than or equal to negative 4. Hollow or filled in circle at negative 4 and positive 10. K is less than 10, greater than 4, negative 4. I shade in between. Okay, now we have some that look a little different. Okay, notice now that this negative 3 is on the same side as the variable, an absolute value, but it's not in the absolute value. So here's why I said first we make sure the absolute value is by itself. So the first thing I have to do is get rid of this negative 3. The way we do that, we do the inverse operation. That becomes 0, so we're left with the absolute value of x divided by 9 is greater than or equal to negative 2 plus 3, positive 1. Now we can split them up. So x over 9 is greater than or equal to 1, and x over 9 is less than or equal to negative 1. Because it's division, we do the opposite, which is timesing by 9. Those cancel out. Those cancel out. We're left with x is greater than or equal to positive 9, and x is less than or equal to negative 9. So positive 9 and negative 9. So 9 would be about right there. The negative, positive would be right there. X is greater than positive 9, so shade this way, less than negative 9, shade that way. Okay. So now if I look at number 40, we've got this divide by 5 that's not part of the absolute value. So first thing I've got to do is get rid of that by doing the opposite. I times by 5. Dividing and timesing by the same number cancels them out. And I'm left with the absolute value of negative 5n is less than 20, because 4 times 5 is 20. So now that I've done that, now the absolute value is by itself. So I make one my first inequality, negative 5n is less than 20. And I make my second inequality, negative 5n is greater than negative 20. Then because we're dividing by a negative 5, I have to flip the inequality, and I get n is greater than negative 4 on one side. Do the same thing to the other inequality. N is less than or equal to positive 4. So hollow circles at 4 and negative 4. N is bigger than negative 4, but smaller than positive 4, and we shade in between. Alright, 2 more problems to go. So this 6 is outside. Opposite of timesing by 6 is dividing by 6. So those cancel out, and we're left with r over 9 in the absolute value. It's greater than or equal to 2 over 6, which 2 over 6 we can reduce. We divide the top and bottom by 2, we end up with 1 over 3. So I make 2 inequalities. R over 9 is greater than or equal to 1/3, and r over 9 is less than or equal to negative 1/3. Now, because it's r divided by 9, we do the opposite. We times both sides by 9. So those get canceled out, and we're left with r is greater than or equal to. Now, 2 ways we can multiply this fraction. The first way is to make it a fraction, multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. 9 divided by 3 is 3. The other way is to realize that 9 is really 3 times 3. So I have 1 divide 3, 1 times 3. They undo each other, and I'm left with 1 times 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. Regardless, there's our answer. We do it to the other one, those cancels out. We get r is less than or equal to the negative version, so -3. So r is greater than or equal to 3, so at 3, filled in circle, r is bigger, shade to the right. And then r is less than or equal to -3, so fill in the circle, and it's less, so shade to the left. Alright, now the last problem here, we've got -10, absolute value of k minus 10 is greater than or equal to -120. Divide everything by a -10. We get absolute value of k minus 10 is greater than or equal to -120 divided by -10. And because we divided by a negative, we have to change the inequality. We get +12. Then we make our two inequalities. So we've got k minus 10 is less than or equal to 12. And we've got k minus 10 is greater than or equal to 12, -12, because we have to change the inequality and make it the opposite. Add 10 to both sides. K is greater than or equal to -2. So -2, filled in circle. K is bigger, shade to the right. Then the other one, we add 10 to both sides. We get k is less than or equal to 22. So at 22, another filled in circle, and we shade to the left, connecting them. And there we go, guys.